ultimately I'm the one that's going to have to save myself. Like I need to grab the bull by the horns. And if I want to make serious change in my life and I want to live the life that I think I want to live, I'm going to need to do that myself. I can't rely on other people to do it. So that's when, I started getting on following an actual workout program.
All right. Welcome back to the 1% Bttr Podcast. Today we have on Chris Gosik. Chris, welcome.
Chuck, great to be on, man. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
Oh, man, I've been stoked. So, founder of VLT Athlete, but in your own words, I would love for you to, for listeners, go into your own background, what got you to this point, what you're all about, the rundown of really who you are.
So man, going back to kind of the beginning. So I grew up a multi-sport athlete, played baseball, football, and ice hockey growing up, and ultimately excelled in baseball. Went to Malvern Prep locally here in the Philadelphia area, and was actually drafted out of Malvern Prep by our hometown team, the Phillies, which was really, really cool. Great time in my life. A lot of great memories from that time, but didn't end up signing and went and played 4 years of Division I baseball at East Carolina University down in North Carolina. So I had a decent career. Didn't end up, as I liked it. And that the baseball story, we can that's a whole different story for a different day. But ended up getting done. And throughout my college career, like I was constantly beat up. I was constantly hurt. And, knowing what I know now about like nutrition and really taking care of yourself as an athlete, I was not taking care of myself like an athlete. Back then there was like no such thing as nutrition coaches or, we didn't have like dietitians or anything that we worked with, sports performance people on staff. So, we kind of, just ate whatever. It was a lot of, quick options, a lot of fast foods, especially being on the road as well. Like at that time, this was back in, I was there from 2009, 2010 was the first year through 2013. Like there was no rhyme or reason to anything that we were eating and they were feeding us or anything. And we didn't know any better either. So, it was also like drinking alcohol a decent amount throughout our time at school there. We had fun, and I think it's a little bit different nowadays. Like a lot of athletes are very aware of the effects that alcohol has on, just your body as a whole. And then, to narrow that down into athletic performance, like alcohol is not great, especially if you're drinking it, multiple times a week like we were. So with that said, I ended up getting done and, never got drafted again, was kind of just like burnout on the game. So got into the working world. But my junior and senior year at ECU, I started having really bad like GI issues and, didn't really like give it much thought. I would kind of have like little spells where my stomach would start acting up and, it was kind of embarrassing. Like I didn't really like talking about it. And I kind of just like masked it almost. I would tell my trainer and he would send me to the team doctor and they would ultimately like prescribe me with like anti-inflammatories that they were telling me that I was having like colon spasms, which I don't even know what that means, looking back on it. But, again, I was a Division I athlete. Like I didn't think anything was wrong with me, but, looking back, like getting through a lot of the days, like one, I was like mentally drained. I was physically exhausted. It was a pretty high intense environment. Right. So like, playing in front of thousands of fans during the season, we were constantly on the road, constantly traveling. Fall ball was a lot. We were practicing 5-6 days a week. We had, early morning, 4:30, 5 a.m. workouts, going to class all day. You'd practice, you'd go lift, and then like you'd have study hall your freshman year. And if not, you were getting your homework done kind of after hours there. So it was, like I would say, playing a Division I sport was like way harder than what we do today as far as like our working world. Like it was a very, very big commitment. Like a lot of people don't realize, all the time, effort, and energy that go into it. So like looking back, I can remember just being like absolutely just completely mentally fried or whatever. And ultimately it was because I wasn't taking care of my body.
Yeah.
So I started having these issues, and I finally, I get done playing and I get into the working world. And like the first couple months into my professional career now, athletics is done. Um, like I would have these, what I know now was ulcerative colitis, but I was having these flare ups in my GI tract that would literally like knock me out for like a week at a time. Like I was started to miss work. Like I was at work and I would have to go to the bathroom probably 5, 6, 7 times a day. And like, it was just embarrassing. Like, I was 23, 22 at the time. And like,
Wow.
I'm the new kid on the block. And like, I really wasn't like raising my hand being like, yeah, I have an issue. And like, I have to go to the bathroom this many times a day. And like, mentally, like, I'm trying to get work done during the day, and I'm like, man, I like the only thing I think about is like, when's the next time this is going to hit me? I got to run to the
Right.
bathroom, and then I would literally just have bouts of exhaustion, nausea. It was really really unpleasant. So I finally, like went to my doctor. My primary put me in touch with a GI specialist. I went and had all the tests done, blood tests, stool tests, endoscopies, colonoscopies, or whatever. Finally get the call from my GI specialist. Hey, we see that you have ulcerative colitis. And I'm like, all right, great. Like I had no idea what ulcerative colitis was.
Right.
Luckily for my mom, she's kind of always been like a beacon of health. And like, for me, I just got done playing a Division I sport. Like I was an athlete my entire life. Like I didn't really put much like thought to it. You know what I mean? I'm like, whatever. So my doctors at the time, like they were kind of just like, all right, here's steroids and here's a prescription medicine. Like you're going to be taking this for the rest of your life. And I was like, all right, like, again, being a 23-year-old kid, I'm like, I really didn't give it much thought. So,
Right.
Fast forward a couple years, like I kind of mentioned before, when I got done playing at ECU, like I was kind of burnt out on fitness and working out. I was burnt out on, getting up and going to the gym every day. Like I kind of just wanted to live, a quote unquote, like normal life. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So when I came back from school, all my high school buddies who I went to Malvern with, all moved back to the area. And for the next couple of years, like we had a lot of fun. Like we were renting beach houses in the summer. We were bouncing around Philadelphia and some of the different towns surrounding Philadelphia. Guys lived in different places, and we would go out on the weekends. And like we had fun at school, but like I never really got to experience like the like kind of, if it makes sense, like no responsibilities almost. You know what I mean? It was like I just got out, just got done working, started making some money, and I was like, all right, we're gonna have fun. So I was drinking a lot. We were partying a lot, which I don't, that aspect of it, I don't regret per se. Some of the best memories I have from that period of time is with those guys. And like, we had a blast together, and I'm glad I did it. But again, I completely like let myself go. So, that was like my personal life. In the professional world, I got into an early stage startup. Shout out Bill Connors, your uncle, got me the job with his startup company at the time, and started doing decently well there, and ultimately ended up working my way up to. He ended up getting me connected with a big hardware technology company. I was there for 4 years. Ultimately, then got recruited by a big software company. Was there for about a year, and then I was partnering a lot with a consulting firm at that software company, got to know the executive team a little bit, and then they actually recruited me to come over on the consulting side. So I started doing, pretty well professionally. Well, as I started doing well professionally and I was getting older and my body was like starting to break down more, these flare-ups were getting worse and worse and worse and worse, to the point where like I was scared. Like I was traveling a lot locally in the area, the greater Philadelphia, like kind of covering all of like Pennsylvania, Delaware, a little bit of New Jersey. And like, so I would have to go out, for like little multi-day trips, or, a couple hours in the car. And like, I would be scared some days to like get in the car to drive hours, because I'm like, I'm going to have to stop at, multiple rest stops, or like
Right.
when these, and people that have Crohn's or colitis, like know what I'm talking about. But when these like pains hit your stomach and these cramps, like you almost like can't control it at times. Like you're like, I got to go, and I got to go now. I got to get to the bathroom. So like, I was scared to go out and like golf with my friends. I was scared to book like, like trips far in advance, because I was like, if I wake up that week, or if that week like something, my stomach's not feeling right, like I'm not going to be able to go on this trip.
Right.
So it was kind of really affecting like my full life, all around. So I remember being like, I was probably, I don't know, 27, 28 years old, and I had a horrible flare up, and like I couldn't get out of bed because it knocks your energy out. Like you don't want to eat, like you're literally like
Paralyzed
now, like like TMI, but like you're like literally, like I was like shitting out blood and like mucus, and like your body's just completely out of whack. Your gut's like completely out of whack. And, not only is it embarrassing, but it's like, you don't want to see anybody. You don't want to talk to anybody. You're literally just miserable.
Yeah.
Going to the bathroom 10, 15 times a day or whatever. So I remember waking up one morning and, horrible flare up. I was in bed for probably 2 or 3 days, and I was like, I can't go on like this. Like I have to do something. I can't live like this anymore. So, going back to my doctors, like I would go to the doctor every 6 months, and I'm like, look, I'm still having these issues. And they were like, well, it's just kind of the way it is. We can up your steroids, we can give you more medicine. And I just was not like, I didn't want to rely on medicine for the rest of my life, as like kind of a crutch to get me through. So again, like going back to my mom, we started researching different like holistic options that people were doing, or, again, like this is probably 2017, 18, 19 maybe.
Okay.
And like, it just had started coming out, like, like social media was getting bigger. YouTube was getting bigger. There was a lot more education out there that was easily accessible.
Yeah.
So ultimately I ended up working with a holistic doctor, which costed me kind of arm and a leg at the time. But at that time, I was in like such bad shape that I was like, I would literally like give every nickel in my bank account to work with anybody that could help me. Started working with a holistic doctor, then ultimately hired a nutrition coach. I then hired a health coach. So I was spending a lot of money on like my health. And over the next, let's call it 6 months to a year, I slowly started piecing together what is now like I call like my health transformation. I was out of shape. I didn't have great energy. I felt like every morning I woke up, my brain was just foggy. Like I couldn't focus on things. And ultimately, after learning about nutrition and learning about different lifestyle changes that I could make, and learning how, what like fitness does. I was used to just going in the weight room and throwing around heavy weights and, running 5 miles. Like there was no rhyme or reason. It was more of a chore than it was like or a necessity for sports, rather than like something that, you want to like revolve your life around. Started learning more about fitness. And then ultimately my health coach started teaching me about, different mindfulness practices and meditation, and all that. So after like kind of piecing all that together, over the course of the next year or so, like I felt like a completely different person. I got myself into really good shape. I started eating, very holistically, whole foods, nutrient dense foods, and ultimately completely transforms my life. As I started going through that process, and people would see me and they're like, hey man, you look great. Like you sound great. Like you sound happy or whatever. Started asking me questions about all different kinds of health stuff, what they should be eating, how much they should be eating. And I really started getting passionate about like helping other people get healthier. I knew what I was going through, and I think a lot of people secretly, like on the inside, know that they need to make a change.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like it's hard to make sustainable change, right? Like it's easy maybe the first week, I'm going to go on I'm going to diet, and that first week it's easier, that second week it's easy, but after you get to week 3, week 4, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, and like life starts getting in the way, and you start having more social events, and like you're out and about, like it's hard to really implement those changes into your life. So as people started asking me more questions. I started becoming more passionate about it to the point where, my job, like, it was great. I worked with a ton of great people in tech consulting and technology. And, some of my best friends at the time are still from that world, but I knew that it wasn't going to be something that I was going to do forever, if that makes sense. I knew that I had, like, I was, when people would ask me about that stuff and ask me about health, and like, I remember being our last quarterly business review, and a couple of the guys were getting up, and I could tell this is a team all up and down the East Coast. So we were all together for, I haven't seen these guys in a while, and I could tell, like, they had a little pep in their step. They were looking better or whatever. And they got up and they were, presenting. And the cool thing that my company was doing was, like, they would always have like a personal section, like personal goals. And, people would have all different kinds of goals or whatever in their personal lives. And like, two of the guys that were talking about, like, their weight loss journey. And like, I was like, dude, that is like so awesome. The one guy was like, I'm down 20 pounds. And like, I mean, you know how hard it is to drop 5 pounds, let alone 20 pounds. And like, they were kind of doing the same thing, piecing it all together. And like, that would like light me up. And I'm like, dude, that is like so awesome. Good for you. You know what I mean? Like that. Yeah. So I'm like, I know I need to do this full time. Like I really enjoy it. I'm passionate about it. And I like, making real change for the better in people's lives. So taking a step back in 2024, I think it was, she'll kill me for this, but I ended up meeting my fiance now, Maddie. And she was also a dual Division I athlete. She played soccer and lacrosse in college, and then she got out of school. She's a way better athlete than I am. So she ended up getting out of school, and to kind of fill her athletic void, instead of doing what I did and just completely start letting yourself go and like partying every weekend, she got really into CrossFit and was doing competitive CrossFit and was, ranked in the top, 2,000 in the country for women her age, which was awesome. And she was managing at the time. She had gotten her exercise science degree and got a couple of different high level certifications. She was a strength conditioning coach in the NCAA for a year. Ultimately, got out of that and was managing a big gym down in Delaware. And same thing. She was working with like the 200 people at the gym that she was working with. But she's like, I know that there's like more for me out there, and I want to be able to affect more people. So when we met, we were both kind of in the same boat. We were both working jobs that ultimately we weren't overly passionate about. And we're like, all right, let's I had a kind of a business background. She had, the fitness. She's a certified nutritionist, has her exercise science certifications and everything like that. So we're like, all right, let's like, how do we do this on a grander level? So we basically just started researching some of the different, wellness companies out there and what they were doing, and kind of familiarized ourselves with starting a small digital business or whatever. So that ultimately led us to starting VLT Health, which we started about a year ago. The LLC was formed actually this week last year, which is really cool looking back on it. Yeah, thank you. And so Maddie started off taking one-to-one. She was doing one-to-one coaching. And then she's like, I can't do this just by myself. So then she created a training app, a daily training app, which we have, a bunch of users on now, that are a bunch of clients on now. And then she got it to the point where she was like, it was way too much work for her. So I was kind of like moonlighting in the background. I was helping her with like a lot of the back end stuff. So she left her job in April of last year to run VLT full time. We got it to the point where like we needed 2 people to do it. And I was like, kind of like chomping at the bit to do it full time. Cause I was like, I love doing this kind of stuff. So I ended up leaving my job in July and to like turn this into a business. We were getting a lot of great results with our clients. Our name was starting to get out there a little bit. We actually had people coming to us asking for help and asking for coaching. So when I left my job in July, it was like, all right, we're kind of all in on like turning this into a real business, and like, let's like start to really scale this thing. So Long story short, like my health transformation ultimately, led me to become passionate about what I'm doing now. And, it took time or whatever, but, it's, the last year has just been the craziest year ever. Like starting a business, I knew it was going to be hard, but like everyone knows it's going to be hard, but it's way harder than
Until
you
you're
think
in
it
it.
is. Yeah, until you're in it.
Yeah.
So, but it's good. Like we're learning a ton, and we finally started. We got it to the point where we were able to start bringing on some employees to help us out. So now we have a team surrounded us, which is like kind of a surreal moment. Like we have a little team now, and we're about to hit like a big growth mode. We're having our website professionally done now, and we have a marketing some marketing team members that we're working with, and like really starting to like blow this thing up. So it's been quite the journey, and we're super pumped about it. But yeah, it's kind of my story in a nutshell.
Absolutely incredible. And I've been fortunate enough to hear your story before, but I wanted to lead off with that because your story is almost like a movie to a degree. Like you've had some, like, it's kind of like a movie script of having the peaks
Yeah.
of like being a great athlete and then going through the trials and tribulations of health issues, kind of going to a low point and then bouncing back and then really finding the purpose of what you're really passionate about doing. That's why I wanted to have you lead off with that. And I think it's incredibly inspiring and also so much to unpack at the same time. I want to go back to really that wake up call that you had with the ulcerative colitis, cycling through the specialists, the medications, really the frustrations that you've dealt with. And I was putting myself in your shoes at those times. And it is so difficult to be in social situations, and as much as you want to be present in
Mm-hmm.
what's going on, your mind is somewhere else thinking about what could potentially happen. So you get this
Yeah.
diagnosis. Most people accept it as their reality, but what really made you to decide that wasn't going to be your option? And what was that breaking point? Like, you know what, F this, I'm going to do this on my terms.
Yeah, well, I think, to what you said, like I think I did accept it as reality for a long time. And I kind of like when I got done playing sports competitively, like I kind of got out of the mindset of like, all right, you're not an athlete anymore. You're just, you're just going to go the rest of your life and kind of just like float through life or whatever. Um, I actually have a note on my desk that's been kind of my mantra over the last 5 or so years. I will not let this beat me.
Hmm.
So, you know, with ulcerative colitis is an autoimmune disease. Basically, when your immune system gets run down, your body has different, at least the way that it works in my body. When my body gets run down, it's like a trigger almost that says like, hey man, something is off in your life, whether it's like you're stressed out, you're not, eating right. A lot of times when I would drink for like a day or two at a time, I would go on these bachelor parties or guys weekends, and I would come back and my body would just like start shutting down. So I think ultimately I accepted the reality, and like I started as like social media got bigger, and like I started following guys that told their stories. I always relate to Nick Bear. I started following him, and he was actually the first workout program that I started following, and he was a
Oh,
big
cool.
inspiration for me. I don't know if of Nick with
Yeah.
Bear Performance Nutrition, but he was a Pennsylvania guy, and he tells a story of his eating disorder when he was younger, and like he kind of got himself out of that, and ultimately he is he's running a multiple $1 million company now,
Hmm.
and they're doing great things. But I started seeing guys like him, and I was like, I need to take accountability into my life. Like, I'm not just going to keep going to the doctor every 6 months and telling them that I have these issues and like they're going to help me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Ultimately, like at the end of the day, and not to get too like, woo woo, but like I was profiting for them. They were giving me medicine. I would have, these colonoscopies every, 2 or 3 years. And like that was profit for them. So like me getting healthy necessarily wasn't, I'm sure personally, like, yes, they wanted to see me get help, but they weren't going to do anything. They weren't talking about nutrition. They weren't talking to me about mindfulness practices and how to,
The right
relax my
questions.
stress. And yeah, exactly. So I was like, ultimately I'm the one that's going to have to save myself. Like
Yeah.
I need to grab the bull by the horns. And if
Mhm.
I want to make serious change in my life and I want to live the life that I think I want to live, I'm going to need to do that myself. I can't rely on other people to do it. So that's when, I started getting on following an actual workout program. I hired the holistic doctor. I hired the nutritionist. I hired the health coach. And, over the course of that next year, like when I started piecing it all together, you start to get momentum. Like I started to see my body changing. And then, ultimately, like I felt more confident at work and
No.
I started having, putting myself in situations, both in my personal life and in my professional life that like was out of my comfort zone because I was confident. You know what I mean? I felt like I know I can do this.
Yeah.
And I would start, having uncomfortable conversations at work or, making like whether it was more cold calls or putting myself out there a little bit, asking for more responsibility. And, the dots always connect backwards. And I think like looking back to then to now, like when I was in it, I was like, why me? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm a fairly healthy person. Like I've never, I was always an athlete. Like, why is this happening to me? But then like, fast forwarding five years, like had I not gone through that initial, like, first the, not ending up my baseball career, not ending up like I wanted to, going through the colitis, like I would never be in this situation. I probably would have just like floated through life. You know what I mean? But
Totally.
because I had to dig myself out of like rock bottom, it ultimately led me to like have the confidence to be like, I'm going to go out and start my own business. Like, I know I can figure this out. It might take some
Totally.
time, but like, so I think, kind of just like having that mentality and, drawing inspiration from other people as well, I think ultimately like saved me and was like, okay, if they can do it, like, I know I can do it.
Yeah. You
Mm-hmm.
go from this, and this happens to a lot of people. You go from this victim mentality
Yep.
to, as you referred to it, as taking the bull by the horns, and
Mm-hmm.
I can control. What can I can control the controllables type deal.
Exactly.
There's also been a shift, and I love how you added your timetables with everything with sports, and then your professional career, then changing into what you're doing now, because those timetables are so important. Of also looking at the shift in how we're looking at health and what it's been over the years, going from medicine 2.0, now we're heading into this medicine 3.0 phase, where you're not just going to the doctors and hearing, okay, this is what you have, prescribing it, and then you're in that cycle of rotation where you
Mm-hmm.
really can't get out of, and you
Yeah.
just accept it for what it is. And I think a lot of people get stuck in this cycle of outsourcing their health, relying on doctors, medications, and the protocols that really aren't working, but they're like, what are the alternatives, just because they
Mm-hmm.
don't know. What's the first step that is really important to breaking that cycle and taking full ownership?
That's a good question. So I think, the first portion for me was education.
Yeah.
I I thought that I was being healthy. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I thought like growing up, my grandmother, my mom's mom was like kind of always she was always looking for like the fountain of youth.
Yeah.
And she lived a very healthy life. She made it to 88 and literally went in with what she thought was a chest cold and died of a heart attack like a day later. And like that, like no sick, like she at 88 she had a trip planned like two or 3 months later to Australia for like 10 days. So she got around, pretty good, like lived a healthy, great life. My mom's kind of the same way. She's like always very on it when it comes to health and, keeping up with like doctors and, she listens to a ton of like health podcasts and that kind of
Mm.
stuff, reads a lot of health, related books. Um, so when I started to be like, okay, like I know that I'm not right, I need to make a change. I started just kind of getting my hands on every, I was following all different kinds of specialists and doctors and nutritionists and kind of just like educating on myself on like what I need to be doing. Now, the tough part with that and ultimately why we started VLT was because there is a lot of
So
information
much.
out there, as you know, like it's like information overload and it's like, where do I even start? So and that's what we start, very small with our clients and educating them on how to eat. We do meal plans and we'll talk about VLT, I'm sure
Yeah.
later
Yep.
in the show. But for me, it was ultimately education and going, okay, like here's what I can do to start. I think, it's like kind of cliche at this point, but like movement is medicine. And I started, listening to different like fitness professionals and guys that were doing it who were in really good shape. And, they started like preaching about the importance of like following an actual program. And like, cause I would go to the gym, like, I was still going to the gym and that kind of stuff, but there was no rhyme or reason to me going to the gym. It was just,
This is more of a
when I
habit.
felt like, exactly. Yeah. When I felt like it, I would go, and I was like, oh, like I haven't done chest in a while. Like I'll do some bench press. Like there's literally no, and like I knew, for the most part, knew what to do from playing, in a Division I program and like kind of having a strength and conditioning program. So I had a general idea, but like I wasn't seeing any kind of, I didn't look like the guys that were going and following a program. Let's put it that way. So until I started learning more about like progressive overload and, how to train your body the right way. And, when I was younger, like it was more for aesthetics. It was more for, looking good or whatever. But now that like we're getting older and, I'm in my mid 30s now, we actually just found out we were pregnant a couple months back or whatever. So we got a baby on the way. Yeah. Thank you. It's like, okay, like it's like a longevity, you know what I mean? Like I'm training for longevity, and like, I want to do the stuff now into my 70s, 80s, and, hopefully 90s, I can get around. Yeah. I know plenty of people that they get to their 60s and their 70s and they have some kind of, major health issue. And like, at that point, you're like, it's hard
cooked
to make some kind of serious change. You know what I mean?
Right.
When you're 64 years old, it's hard to start getting into a fitness or, a health routine. So ultimately, like, I think, just knowing how to take care of your body the right way, how to eat the right way, sleep's big, obviously like learning about what sleep does. Like I never put any thought into sleep or anything like that. Knowing how that, restores your body the right way and how it works with your brain, as you would know. I think the biggest thing is just like educating yourself.
Yeah,
to start.
totally. Education's super important. You touched on it too, the information overload that's out there. There's so much good information, but the other point of it is it's not personalized. And
Exactly.
that's a big difficulty for people that do like to be students of the game and learn and take in information. But you could do something like, let's just say you watch a video that says like, yada yada, these people are typically low in magnesium. And then you're just like in your head, oh, I must be low on magnesium, so let me start taking magnesium.
Yeah.
But that might not be the case. So making sure that it's tailored to yourself and what works best for you to be successful. Before stepping into VLT, I actually want to touch on the Belize trip. What was it about stepping away from the daily routine from the corporate world and just your daily routine? Because we are such in daily routines. Like I think you, me, anybody listening to this goes, oh, it's Monday. And then you blink and you're like, oh my God, it's Friday. This week flew by because you're doing the same exact thing every single day, which is good because you have a routine. But at the same time, you lose track of potentially so much time that could be going in other areas. So what made stepping away from that daily routine made it so clear for the vision for VLT for you and Maddie?
Yeah. Man, I feel like I could go a lot of different ways with this, and we could probably talk for another hour just on this topic. Cause I am very like routine oriented. Like I have the same morning routine, and, even sometimes I struggle with like, all right, if I, let's say I get to bed, we're out the night before and I get to bed later and like, I'm not waking up at my normal time. Like, how that kind of like, I have to like recalibrate my brain into like, okay, like, you know what I mean? I'm sure you're probably the same way. And obviously, we don't have kids yet. So having a kid is definitely going to test that. And I've been trying to, as far as like the routines go, like I've been trying to have like almost like A, B, and C routine days where it's
that's
like,
a great idea.
I know that, when I'm going and I'm going good, like 5 a.m. wake up and I have my, my first hour in the morning, and that's kind of my time. If I wake up a little bit later, I kind of have a B where I'll cut some of that short, and, then a C where it's just like, all right, I'm kind of getting ready to work, which that's like dire and, situations. And I hate doing that, but
yeah,
man, So Belize was incredible. That was our first time down there. I had done St. Thomas and the Virgin Islands before, but that was my first time down to Belize, and we booked that trip uh, heading into. So that was 2024, the end of 2024. Um, we booked that trip. I was like, it was year one of me in this, my full year at the consulting firm, and I was running a million miles a minute. I mean, like I was traveling a lot. I was like entertaining constantly, dinners, lunches, happy hour, like always out doing something. I was trying to build a business within, a consulting firm. So the only way to do that is like, you got to work smart and you got to work hard. Like you got to be out and kind of pounding the pavement. So heading into that Christmas, I was telling Maddie, I was like, man, like I need to just like get away from this for like a week. Like I'm starting to kind of feel it. Like I'm feeling a little bit burnt out. Like, the thought of just like checking my inbox in the morning and like, following up with a million emails. I was like, I knew I could sense that I was starting to like kind of burn out a little bit. Because I was just running so hard for an extended period of time. So I'm like, why don't we like look for something, down in Florida? Like, let's just get away for a week. So she actually surprised me. I didn't know that was happening. She booked the whole trip herself. Like good on her. And that was my Christmas present that year.
That's awesome.
Which was really cool. So, and just like kind of, I think, like as Americans, like we have we definitely, and it goes back to like social media a little bit, but like social media is great in some cases and it's not great in some cases. And I think like I even became victim to it of like the hustle culture almost. And like, just like, you gotta go and work. And like going down to Belize, and then actually that May we booked another trip we did 10 days in the Tetons in Yellowstone. We rented like an RV Sprinter van and went out and just kind of cruised around and saw Yellowstone and the Tetons and Jackson Hole and went up to Big Sky and just kind of like camped for 10 days.
So cool.
So actually after those two trips, it started in Belize, and then like it even confirmed it more when we went out west. Just like getting away and like not being plugged in and not being on your phone and not having to answer to a million emails. It's like, whew, man, like this is like, there's more to life. You know what I mean? Like, why are we working so hard? And trust me, I'm not against hard work, but like there's something to be said for working on things that you are like passionate about. And like, even with starting VLT, like it's been an absolute, I mean, I've worked with like for VLT, I've been working longer days and hours. We try to take completely like Sundays off. Mm-hmm. And we work like pretty much Monday through Saturday. I'm actually training for a marathon. I always said I wanted to do a marathon. So when we found out we were pregnant, I was like, all right, I got to do this now before the baby comes. So I'm training for a marathon on top of it. But we work, pretty much Monday to Saturday, and then Sunday we try to take completely off. But there's even, a little like something I try to spend an hour or two on Sunday, just like kind of cleaning my calendar up, inbox up. So I'm like, plan my week out.
Yeah.
So I'm probably working more now than I was even, at my last job. But there's something, it doesn't necessarily feel like work, if that makes sense. Like I enjoy doing it. And it's new for me. Like the whole wellness world and the fitness industry is newer for me. Maddie's been in it, way longer than I have. But for me, it's like exciting. Like every day is like a challenge, but like getting through those challenges and getting through those hardships, like it ultimately, like it really does make you a stronger person. You know what I mean? Like the more like hard situations that you put yourself in and you get through it and you get to that next milestone and, it makes you a bigger person. So when we went down to Belize, we're like, all right. And we just love spending time together. Like Maddie and I have a lot in common. We're kind of like yin and yang. She's like a fiery Italian, and I'm like more of a, I feel like I'm type A, but like I am kind of a little bit more laid back at times. So we're like, all right, how can we create a world and a life where we don't feel like necessarily that we have to do this and like get away as far away from our reality as possible? She was working long hours in a gym. I was working long hours and was out on the road a lot. So I was like, how do we, one, help people with, with getting healthier and, something that we're passionate about, and like kind of create this world that we don't necessarily feel like we have to escape from. So with that, we kind of just like put our heads together and we're like, all right, like I think we can do this. And like we're literally we got home. That was probably the end of January. Like I said, that the LLC was formed in early March or mid March. So that was like a month and a half, 2 months later. Like we got to work right away, and we're just like, let's take action. Like we need to do this. And we like, we were working in the mornings and at night and on weekends. Like we were still both obviously working our day jobs. But we just jumped right into it. And it was kind of like, all right, like we're done talking about it. Like, let's go do it. And it was exciting to us. And because we enjoyed, so much like being around each other, and like she's a good compliment to me. I think I'm a good compliment to her. Obviously we had talked about working together and how much of a change that would be, whatever. Like that's obviously, you always hear about couples working together, but we kind of like made a vow to ourselves, and we're like, all right, like this is never going to get in the way of like our relationship. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I think, we've had our challenges, definitely, just cause we're in the same house together. We don't live in a mansion. Like we're, kind of on top of each other a little bit. And especially the first year in starting a business, there is a lot of stress that goes into it.
Oh my gosh.
So, we've been like at each other's throats a couple of days, but like, it's funny. Like we'll we'll get out of the house and like, it's like, ooh, okay. And like, we're, like everything's great. And it's actually strengthened our relationship. I think we feel like we're building something together, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So ultimately that trip like kind of changed the trajectory of our life. And we're like, all right, how can we do this and be able to travel and be able to live the life that we want to live while also, working on something and working with people that we're passionate about.
What's really cool about that whole thing is you had multiple different catalysts to lead to this. You had your health, but then you also had the world that both you and Maddie were in to like take a step away. And people, I started realizing this after my brain surgery, was that that was a negative that happened to me.
Yeah.
You see, same for you, but even your trips, you're taking a step away from the norm, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it gives you clarity on what's most important. Like I had the same thing with the brain surgery. As much as that is a negative, I had time to step away of like, what is the message that I want people to understand? What conversations do I want to have with people that really stick with people when they're driving or listening, any way, shape, or form? And then what that does is it allows you to propel what you want to do and what you're most passionate about. And from my followings with VLT, even right now, it's incredible what you guys are doing. I do want to get into it from with it. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, and really quick, just to touch on that too. Like, I think, especially like the area that we live in, and like, we went to schools like right outside of Philadelphia, both of us. And like a lot of people, you get out of school, it is like a more affluent area. And like right away, you're like, I got to keep up with everybody and I got to make money. And like, I was way guilty of it, like chasing the dollar.
Likewise.
Like I was like, I'm going to like sell my soul to make as much money as I possibly can. And like, I had a really good job. Like the consulting firm that I went to, they ultimately ended up getting acquired, for a ton of money. And, everybody, a lot of the people that I worked with, and me included, like I was doing it to make money. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't necessarily overly passionate about it, but it was a great way to make money. And I think when going on those trips, it kind of was like a wake up call to be like, I can make all the money in the world, but what good is it if I'm not enjoying my life and I'm miserable around the people that I love? And like, I can't spend time with people that I love, because I'm out. Like on the weekends, I just want to like stare at the wall, like, cause I'm so like mentally fried, you know what I mean? So I think, finding the balance of like, yes, like you want to do things that you're passionate about. And like, obviously you have to provide for a family and everything like that, but like also not selling your soul and like being like, money's the only thing that I care about. Like I'll probably butcher it, but somebody said, ultimate wealth is the freedom to spend as much time with the people that you love as possible. or like as you possibly can. You know what I mean? Like that to me is like now what I'm chasing is like, money's great and like it can do a lot for you, but like ultimately like I want to be able to not feel like I'm like so wrapped up in my day-to-day work that like I'm missing like life moments. You
Yeah,
know what I
you
mean?
blank. You
Especially,
blink and
yeah.
life goes by, especially with you being a soon to be parent.
Yep.
Money to me is an enabler and it gives
Mhm.
you the ability to do things. But I think we're in a world of an abundance of opportunities now with
Yeah.
how we're connected. Like you're in Delaware, I'm in Pennsylvania.
Hmm.
We're recording right now.
Yep. Exactly.
Technology allows a lot of opportunities to come out there. But one thing I've noticed as I've become a parent and now have a maniac 2-year-old. She's absolutely amazing, but the most important commodity to me, and I guess you could even say, if you want to put it in a monetary aspect, is that time that you
Yeah.
get with her, your wife,
Hmm.
and loved ones. As you know, time goes by really quickly. I know you shared in the past like lost loved ones too, and it's like
Yep.
you want to savor those moments as much as you possibly can while still building something. I think there's a deep
Yeah.
root in
Absolutely.
us as
Hmm.
humans of wanting to build. Like when
Yeah.
you're building something, you get this fulfillment factor that great, working for a company is amazing. A lot of people do it more often
Yeah.
than not. There's another piece to everybody where it's like, man, I wish this was mine. Like
Yeah,
mine.
exactly. Exactly. And like
Yeah.
Bill, I think for men especially, like I know I feel the most motivated when I am building something and something that I actually care about.
Yeah.
Like we talked about before we got on here, like the garden, like knowing that you got to get out and like get your seeds in the ground and you got to water it every day and like you're building something, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And especially like a business too, like, I was concerned with that. Like a lot of the guys that I was working with, like they had younger kids and like they were traveling a lot. And I'm like, man, like I just, I saw the road that I was going down and like, yes, like financially, it was great, but like I was like, I don't necessarily need the big houses and I don't need the nice cars and I don't need like I've kind of gotten away from that. And like you said, like I lost, a couple loved ones over the last couple of years. And like, man, it's just like, this could be over tomorrow. Like, what am like, why am I doing this? You know what I
Big
mean?
time.
So I can live in a bigger house to try to impress people that like, I don't even necessarily know, you know what I mean? To
Mhm.
keep up with the Joneses. So,
That's
it
our
was
that
like,
that's our yeah. That's our
it
capitalist
was,
society.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Which is great. I've like nothing against that, but it wore its time with me, and like I was like, I gotta kind of shift my mindset, and as much as like Matt, I was talking about some of the challenges that Maddie and I have gone through, that I think has ultimately made our relationship stronger. Like it's funny, we laugh. We're like, Maddie, like I haven't like we've gotten to spend every day together. Like we don't,
Mhm.
we're not, because we are working from home and everything we do is digital. Like I haven't had to travel. I haven't had to necessarily like go to work, if that makes sense. Like
Totally.
now we're going to have the baby, and I'm like, Maddie, like this is going to be awesome. Like I know so many people that I used to work with that like they were missing those early moments and they were traveling. They had to be out on the road and they got young kids. Like I'm going to be able to be home for all of this, which
Yeah.
is really cool. And that's ultimately what we're trying to build. It's like a company that people, work life balance. And I don't, I think I've read a lot of good stuff and a lot of like mentors that I've talked to, and they're like, you'll never, if you're building something truly that you want to leave your legacy on the world, you're never going to have a work life balance. You have to find a way to integrate work with your life and make it kind
Mhm.
of like work and play like two in the same. So now it's cool. Like a lot of the people that we're working with, like we're setting up like community days and we're trying to get people out to like wellness retreats, and like
Love
yes
that.
it's work, but like it's like we enjoy it, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So that's it was definitely a risk, but like we're starting to reap the rewards of some of the benefits that we're getting with it.
They should be synonymous with one another, and if you're doing it the right way, that's what happens. And with VLT, it
Mhm.
really isn't just another online coaching platform. From what I've seen, it's really an ecosystem design, as you were talking about earlier,
Mhm.
for longevity. the performance side of things, and community. What was the gap that you guys saw in the fitness industry that made you say, you know what, we need to build something a little bit different than
Yeah.
kind of the average Joe has put out there for X amount of years before?
Mm-hmm. So this is kind of the twofold, and I'll give Maddie's perspective. So she was a personal trainer. She worked in a gym that was like a pretty expensive membership, and her thought was like most of the people that really need help necessarily can't afford it.
Mm.
So we were trying to break down some of the financial barriers and like the barriers to entry financially. And that's where we created our daily training app. So we have 3 daily workouts. We have an at-home, an in-gym, and a hybrid track. The at-home is, anywhere from 20 to 40-minute workouts. You just need 2 dumbbells. It's written by our strength and conditioning coach now. Is like a world-renowned strength and conditioning coach. That's meant for people that are kind of on the go or just trying to get something in pretty quickly. And again, it gets back into like progressive overload and following a program and training the right way.
Yeah.
Our in-gym track could be done at, any traditional gym. And then the hybrid track is a little bit more like high interval training, that kind of stuff. So we were trying to break down, give people, good workouts that they could follow daily. And also the other side of the training app is everybody who's in the app has access to our coaching staff. So
Nice.
We have now 4 coaches on staff, not including myself, that they all have access to. We put out weekly and monthly like nutritional guides and information and ebooks and everything like that. We have incredible recipe books that we put out for seasonal recipes every month. And we drop like a new recipe book that's like anywhere from like 20 to 30 different like really healthy recipes, high protein. We have low carb. We have plant-based recipes, recipe books. So it really kind of touches like the whole gamut of nutrition.
Yeah.
And they have access to our one-to-one coaches. So with that, like we always say, like, there's people that necessarily can't afford more of like the one-to-one coaching. That's a great way to access, our coaching staff and not have to like, really make a massive investment to be able to get healthy, which is really neat.
Yeah, you mentioned, and that actually is wanted to go into my next question with that. You could have gone that traditional route with high ticket fitness coaching, like that. That's an very easy route to go, but you prioritized affordability and accessibility, and I find that one honorable, but also at the same time trying to build more of, like you said, a community, a bigger presence with VLT than just this one-to-one approach. Was that a non-negotiable, or was that something that is just baked into what VLT is?
Yeah, so we definitely wanted to be able to have it be more accessible to everybody. I think a lot of people, it goes back to the education thing. Like a lot of people need, just very basic education, and they can kind of like see their way through it and coach themselves. Now we have a one-to-one, we call it like a transformation program. And that's for, anybody who has tried, like we get people from all different walks of life that have tried different fad diets and tried different, kind of things that you see on social media, or they've worked with, quote unquote, like doctors before, and like they just have not gotten results. And they do want to transform their lives. So that is like a very, very white glove, very custom. We do blood paneling. We write based on their goals. Like we write very customized nutrition plans, down to like the grocery stores that they shop at. Complete grocery list, like teaching people how to sustainably eat healthy. Yeah. We see that like a lot of people will come to us where, they might have lost 20 pounds prior, but they didn't necessarily do it in a healthy way. And then they put the weight back on plus more. And they just like, they don't even know like where to start. You know what I mean? As far as like how to sustainably lose weight and like live a healthier life. We also do very custom workouts, specific to each individual person of where they're at. If you've never worked out in a day in your life, like we'll start there. If you like, have some fitness experience, like, we'll start a little bit more advanced for you. So we do the one-to-one, but we like a big part of what we were doing was like, we want to make this more accessible. And that's where the app came from as well. And then the last thing we do is we've started getting into the corporate wellness space, which is really cool. So
Nice.
yeah, that kind of happened by accident. One of our one-to-one clients was an executive at an auto body company, and he's like, "Hey, like this is like really cool, like what you guys are doing, and the coaching, and you have the training app on top of it. Like would you ever like roll this out to like a business?" And we're like, "Well, yeah, sure." We're like, "Yeah, definitely." So it took us like a week or two to build out, but we like put together, we built them out their own private community, which now we've kind of streamlined that process. So we're working with a couple small businesses.
Wicked.
And, we're having a lot more conversations or whatever. And, it's neat. We're like, because we have the platform already built, we can, again, like a lot of these businesses we see, on average, there's about a 30 to 40% like engagement rate with these companies, that when they do have wellness programs, like only 30 to 40% of employees are using the program. So one, we are like a fraction of the cost of what a traditional a lot of these like wellness, like big wellness programs kind of cater to like larger companies.
Yep.
So from a financial perspective, like it's just way too expensive for like a small to medium sized business. So we're working with customers now anywhere from like 50 to like 500 employees is kind of our sweet spot to start.
Excellent.
But same thing, like all their employees now have access to our team of coaching staff. As coaching staff, we have somebody on our team now that just works with the businesses. So like they're in constant communication with them. We build out nutrition guides for local lunch spots, dinner spots, happy hour spots, like people that like around the offices that they're frequenting, and like their managers will let us know those places, and we'll go in and build out, complete nutritional guides for those places, just to help people make smarter decisions, make healthier decisions when they're like going out or like going to grab lunch or a snack or something like that. So that's been like really cool. And again, it's, for much cheaper we see than what, kind of what's out there on the market. So that's like a whole different, kind of line of business now that we're starting to run with, which has been pretty neat. So it's kind of been like a whirlwind the last, 6 months or whatever.
Yeah.
And we've kind of built this foundation. So it's been fun now that we're getting into kind of growth mode to start to scale everything.
I'm fortunate enough to, and everybody that's listening to this, to see your guys' journey on social media and what you guys put out there, but also see the results of it as well. A couple more questions before I let you go. I want to go back to that point of what you were saying, people starting exercise for the first time, or they hit rock bottom with their health before they take it seriously. And I think all of us can admit very quickly, like, we don't want people to go through that or hit that point in order to take action. If you had to boil it down to one thing, and I know this is super tough, but if you had to boil it down to one thing that you wish people would change before they ever hit that breaking point, what would it be? And I'm taking out education. You can't say education.
All right, that's a good one. So I've, in the last year, have changed my like training mentality to stay ready instead of like get ready. So like, for example, like a lot of people will sign up for like we have the Broad Street Run coming up in Philadelphia, and I think it's another month or two in May. And like a lot of people will sign up for that race, they'll get in and they'll be like, all right, now I got to start training for like the Broad Street. You know what I mean? I've changed my mentality to like, I want to just stay ready for life.
Right.
Going, some of the hardships and things that I've dealt with in my life, like, and losing loved ones or, people that have been close to me. If something bad happens to you, whether it's a heart issue or you get in a car accident, or in an extreme example, you're driving down the street and you see a fire on the side of the road and like somebody needs help. Like I want to be ready to like, if I have to go take action and like drag somebody out of that building, or I got to drag, my wife or my fiance or, something out of a car, I want to be ready for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Proactive versus reactive.
Yeah, exactly. And like, especially now with seeing, loved ones get sick and ultimately pass away, or just people that, have been healthier and have gotten sick. You go through COVID, like if you're healthy to begin with, and look at you. I mean, you went through this, right? I mean, if you weren't in like half decent shape, what you went through, we might not be having this conversation right now.
No.
You know what I mean?
Big time.
So like it's much easier to stay ready, to stay in shape, to stay like, and you don't need to, like, I've realized too, like, consistency is king. Like, you do not need to kill yourself in the weight room every day. Like I said, I was guilty of like going, like I would go in there, 2-3 times a week and like, try to kill myself. But like now it's just like, it's more, it makes more sense and it's way more sustainable if like you just kind of go and keep it at like 80% every time you go in. Like, you do not need to, like, I make it a point every day to try to get anywhere from like 7 to 15,000. I try to get closer to 15,000 steps every day because I feel 10 times better when I'm moving and walking. But like just moving your body, like a lot of our one-to-one clients, especially, if they're not in a routine of going to the gym or whatever, the first couple of weeks we're like, look, here's your meal. Like we obviously like walk them through this and we're with them every step of the way, but it's like, nutrition's the most important. Second is walking, get 10,000 steps. Like let's start there. You know what I mean? Because when you kind of get into that routine of moving every day, like you feel
it's an addiction.
So much better. Yeah. It's an addiction. Like when you start to feel like that, like you're like, all right, I want to get to bed at a decent hour because I know I want to wake up and feel good again tomorrow. And I want to do, you know what I mean? So for me, it's just like I said, changing my mindset to like getting ready for something than like staying ready. You know what I mean? Like
powerful.
if a friend invites me to go mountain biking or go for a big hike or, go run a race, like I want to be ready that like within a week or two, I can be like, all right, yeah, I can do this. You know what I mean? Like I don't have to be like start from scratch to be, because that's like so much harder to do. You know what I mean? So I think getting ready compared to staying ready.
I hope so many people take that wholeheartedly and run with that, no pun intended, because it is so powerful and we're not meant to just sit around all day.
Well, you think of our ancestors and like early ancestors, like they were hunter-gatherers. Like
hunter-gatherers,
they were
great
out,
book.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Right there.
Like if you didn't go hunt or pick your food, like you weren't eating. You know what I mean? So like as humans, we are literally made to move. And I think it's so easy nowadays to, I mean, I even go, especially in the winters up here, like, you're stuck inside, you're not moving.
It's hibernation.
You got social media, you got Netflix, like everything's instant. You got Amazon, like you don't even have to go out to get your food anymore. You get the, DoorDash, you get, all the meal delivery companies. Like it's so easy to be sedentary. And then on top of it, a lot of us work jobs that, again, I was guilty of it. I mean, you know what it's like. Like how many days where it's like, if you don't, get up and move, like you're like, I sat at my desk for 7 hours today. That's like the worst thing. You don't even realize it. And that's like the worst thing you could possibly do. You're staring at a screen all day and then you get done around 5:30, 6 o'clock. And you're like, I don't feel like doing anything.
No, which is so counterintuitive, or like to, you haven't moved and you're like, oh, now I want to move. But it's actually, no, I actually don't want to move. Because I haven't moved. Which
feel
is
like exactly.
So strange. So yeah, man, I couldn't agree with you more. Last question for you. 5 years from now, so we're in 2030. You have a 4.5-year-old, maybe some more kids at that point.
I'll be 40 by then, dude. That's crazy to think about.
Me too. What does the fully realized version of VLT Athlete look like? What's the ultimate vision for what you guys are building?
I mean, we want to be known as your partner in all things health. So I think we want to be known as like, if you want to get yourself healthy, you come work with us. I mean, the whole reason that we started VLT, it had a lot to do with Maddie's experience and fitness in the wellness world, but, it also had a lot to do with what I went through. Like, having to piece everything together yourself and work with different people. We've taken all of that and brought it under one roof. So, our first 3 months of our program, you're working with a nutritionist, who's also specializes in, writing very custom workouts for you. So the first 3 months is like fitness and health or nutrition. And then the next 3 months, we actually just brought on a integrative health specialist. So that's making
Nice.
like lifestyle improvements and, again, going down the list, sleep, how to optimize sleep, stress management, creating healthy habits, morning routines, wind down routines, like educating on everything that is involved in like living a like more wholesome, healthier life. So ultimately, our goal, and it sounds kind of funny to even say, but like we want to help over 1 million people get healthier. And like ultimately, I think if we can do that, that kind of has a ripple effect through society. Our dream is like we want to eventually one day buy like own a regenerative farm where we're we have grass fed cattle and pasture raised chickens and a big garden or whatever. That's like our ultimate dream. But on top of that, we also would love to start doing, and this is on like kind of our vision board, but we want to start doing wellness retreats. Like my dream is to I would love to either own or have access to a property where maybe we have like a big barn dominium or a couple small cabins and some saunas and cold plunges and a pickleball court, and there's hiking trails or trail running trails or mountain bike trails, and like kind of start doing like wellness weekends. I think a lot of times like in our society, in our life, like people like need to blow steam, and that involves like alcohol, partying, and or just going to sit on a beach somewhere and like you're doing nothing. We want to create more of an environment where alcohol is not necessarily, I'm not saying alcohol is like the worst thing ever, but we want to create an environment where socially, like you don't have to rely on alcohol.
Positive vices,
yeah, exactly,
so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah. So being out in nature, having and our place now that we just moved into, like we kind of bought it with that idea in mind of like we wanted to create our own little wellness retreat. So we have a sauna here, we have a cold plunge, we have a little gym that we built out. Love it. So like ultimately, like that's what we would love to start doing is like more like wellness retreats and that kind of stuff. But gotta walk before you can run. So we're getting there. It's on the vision board.
I think the most underrated thing about your guys' property is it's aesthetically pleasing. Like it just is such a well set up area. Like the gym is incredible. The way you have the cold plunge right, obviously you want it right next to the sauna, so you don't freeze your ass off going to it. But just the fire pit, everything. It's a great setup that you guys have, and for listeners, highly recommend following along. That's my last question. Before my last question, where do people follow you and everything going on?
Yeah, so we're pretty active on Instagram. I'm starting to do more on LinkedIn, but Instagram for the most. Instagram, Facebook. We're actually in the process now of getting like all the social media handles and everything like professionally built to where people know exactly what we do. But yeah, Maddie and I are both on Instagram at Maddie Shocks and at Chris Gosik.
Chris, can't thank you enough for coming on. This has been an amazing conversation. And I said in my head probably 5-6 times, I could go 4 or 5 hours talking to him about stuff. So
the first time we talked, it was like 2 hours and we were just talking.
We're definitely going to have you back on. Maybe have Maddie join too. I think that would be
in person next time.
Yes, that's a great idea, because that's my next evolution of this podcast, doing ones in person. So, hey, maybe I can come down and do it at the gym. That would be cool.
Well, let's do it, man. That would be awesome.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on. Everybody, thank you for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode of 1% Better. Take care.